Hi, this is Jamie Magridge coming to you from my craft table today. Today I'd like to show you how I made this card. It's just a little bit of techniquing. It's not difficult. It's just a couple colorings. Okay, so let's get started. Let me scroll you down. I'm going to turn you off and turn you back. Alright, for today's video, you're going to make this card. You're going to need a Memento ink pad, 2 Stampin' Up markers. We're going to need the Pineapple Punch and the Bermuda Bay. You probably could use the blends, but I just used those. A 2.5 inch strip of the Designer Series paper. I'm going to be using the larger check. To color in the image, I'm using blends, and I have Pineapple Punch Light. I have Old Olive Light. I think this is Pineapple Punch Dark. I think this is this is Light Mossy Meadow. Then I have Dark Bermuda Bay and Light Bermuda Bay. Okay, so we're going to be using this die from the Wonderful Floral Framelets. Our Big Shot. Oops. We have a scrap of paper to cut out our framelet with. We have a piece of Whisper White, which is 3 inches by 5.5 inches, and a piece of the thick paper, which is 5.5 by 8.5, scored and folded at 4 1/4. I'll put that side over here. We're going to be using the Wonderful Romance stamp set. We're going to be using this stamp, and we're not putting a sentiment on it this time. Happened to my box. Okay, we're going to be using the Lace Dynamics folder, the embossing folder, for this piece here. I want it lined up right with this line here on there, but we'll run it through. And we're going to be using our Stamparatus and a ruler. So let's get started. First thing I want to do to get the Big Shot out of the way, take this over here. Let's get the Big Shot in it, and we'll use it. Okay, you see it? Okay, so to do the die cutting, I'm going to be using the Big Shot platform, the thin die adapter, a cutting plate, my paper. I'm going to position the die on it, tape it down just so it doesn't move. Make sure my plates are lined up so that they're not sticking out the sides. Add another plate on top and run it through the machine. Hopefully this isn't wiggling too badly. Alright. Alright, we need that piece. You'll notice we haven't stamped on it yet. That's why we're using the Stamparatus. You could stamp on it first and then die cut it out. I just chose to do it this way. Alright, then we're going to remove the thin die adapter. We're using the Dynamics folder, so we only need one plate. I've placed my paper in there. You'll see there's little lines like in the center of this lace part. So I put my paper in there right next to that line. We're going to put it in so that the crease is going into the machine first. Make sure it's not sticking out the edge. Add my cutting plate on top and run it through. Okay, I can get this out of the way now. There's our piece. You can use it either side. They're both really pretty. I'm going to put that aside for now. Alright, now we're going to go ahead and stamp our image and place that aside. So what I've done is the piece that I die cut this out of, I'd adhere that to my Stamparatus. This is a cling mount foam rubber stamp. It has the foam on it, so I don't need the foam pad in here. I've removed that. I just have a piece of grid paper in there. I've magneted the grid paper down, made sure it's all the way in the corner. I'm going to place, what I've done is then I've taken my stamp. I'll go ahead and do it so you can see how. I've taken my stamp and I've placed it in that. You can kind of feel where it fits in there. Make sure it's in there where you want it. And you close your door. Okay. And I have a scrap piece just so I can make sure. I thought I did, maybe I didn't. Let's just take a scratch piece of paper then and slide it underneath there. So we know it's in the right place. I'd already done it before, so you couldn't tell my stamped image is on that paper already. So then I stamped it. And this one, I didn't care if I got a perfect image. I was just trying to see where it was located. And I'm using the Memento ink. Stamp it, make sure it's where I want it. And it's a little bit off. So we'll clean it with the chamois. We'll move it in a little bit more. Make sure it's all clean. I use one side to clean it and then I wipe it with the other side. Okay, let's try that again. Let's put it in here. Make sure these tails are lined up. I should have just left it where it was because it was lined up perfectly, but I wanted to show you how. Try it one more time, see if it's right this time. It ended up going exactly the same spot, so we'll leave it there then. Okay. So we're going to put our piece of paper in here. It's like a puzzle. It's going to fit in those holes. We're going to ink up our stamp. Make sure it's inked up really well. And we're going to stamp. Give it good firm pressure. Don't be afraid of it, especially in the middle. You don't have to give. Okay, there you go, and that's our stamped piece. So we can put this aside. We're done with it. Well, we're done with the stamping part of it. Put it aside so it'll dry a minute. Okay, now we're gonna. We started with this piece of designer series paper, and I made it into this. It's a little bit more plaid than just a gingham, and I used the Stampin' Right markers and a ruler. And I just took the ruler and eyeballed it. You can line it up with the grid lines if you want, but I just eyeballed it. It was just easier for me. Lined up the ruler. For the yellow stripes, I used the wide end of the Stampin' Right marker and the pineapple punch marker. And I started off the page, drew a line down the center of each one of these white spaces. I just picked a spot and tried to make it the same all the way through. Okay. This one is just going to catch a tiny bit of it, so I'll go ahead and just catch a tiny bit of it. It wasn't even on the paper. There we go. Okay. And then I turned it and I did the same thing going the other way. Almost done here. I wasn't going to do this. I was just going to have one completed, but it's not taking too long, so I'll go ahead and finish it. And this is a little bit longer than 5.5 inches. I just found it easier to have it longer and trim it off than to worry about whether or not it was gonna match exactly. And then I added the Bermuda Bay thin stripes. I liked it like this too, with just the yellow, but the Bermuda Bay thin stripe just kind of added just a little bit something else. So I used the thin end of the marker this time, and I just chose one side of the yellow line, and again start off the page and draw your line. And it's really thin line, so you might have to draw a little bit more straight up and down with the marker so that it makes contact with the paper. Okay, turn it and do the same thing on this side. Doesn't matter which side you choose, just choose a side. Draw your lines. Everyone's going to be a little tiny bit different because obviously, unless you're measuring exactly, your lines are going to be in a slightly different spot, or your thickness or your pressure of your pen is going to be slightly different. That one just slid, but that's alright, it'll still work. Hold the ruler firmly so so you get straight lines. Alright, there's our designer series paper. Okay, so we're done with the ruler. We'll put that aside. Now we're going to color our image. Oh, I forgot a step. I forgot the butterfly. I mean the heart. sorry. My dog started barking and my camera moved when I shut it off. I forgot that I needed a heart cut out of white paper with from the Be Mine stitch framelit dies. So let me do that real fast. I'll just take it over here and do it. Okay, now it cuts out this heart, and then the scalloped part stayed in the die. Let's pop that out. This is the piece we need. Okay. All right. Sorry about that. Now to color this. Okay, I use the light pineapple punch. Oops, the wrong end. And on these larger leaves, I colored a little bit on this one side here. Of the larger leaves, I just picked one side. And then on these smaller leaves, I colored them all in with this light pineapple punch. All these small leaves. That's a flower. These are small leaves here and here. Okay. Alright. Then I took the light old olive, and that side of those large leaves that we already colored that light yellow in, I colored the other side of that. So it gives it a little bit of a two-tone look. Alright, let's color this one. And this one. Okay, it's no fancy coloring, just coloring it in. Then I took the light mossy meadow. You could use the dark old olive too, which is what I might have used. And then I colored the other side of the leaf. Of the large leaves. And you can use the smaller tip if you feel you have better control. A couple more here. That part there. Alright, now the flowers are the Bermuda Bay. I colored all these flowers with the light Bermuda Bay. left the centers. Sorry, I'm not talking. To concentrate just a little bit, and I kind of get in the zone when I'm coloring. I do find it relaxing. Not doing the best job here today, but okay. Now all of these little ones, they're probably supposed to be leaves, but I didn't want to bring in another blue. I mean another green. So I did them all with this light Bermuda Bay. I could have done them beige or something. Like I think in the design, one of the designer series papers, it's beige. Okay, and then I took the dark Bermuda Bay, just did a little bit of flicking in the center of the flowers, like 3 little flicks, a longer one in this and 2 smaller ones. And again, you could use the smaller tip. Okay, then I took that really bright yellow, the pineapple punch, did the center of those flowers in. Okay, that's all of that. Now let's assemble our card. I need some dimensionals. I need some Tombow. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is adhere this piece, and we want it to be, decide which way you want it. I think I want it to go like that. Okay, so that's going to go on the front of our card. So adhere that. Make sure you got it good on the edges, because it is quite dimensional. I must have used the old olive on this one because it's much more yellowy green. I like it better. Alright. Put that on there. Okay, then we're going to take our designer series paper piece that we drew the lines on, and we're going to glue it on. You could use your tape runner. I just find the Tombow works better for me. Line it up with the edges. Okay. Here well. Grab your snips. Turn it over. Oops. Use the card as your guide to trim off this little bit. Okay. Then we're going to bring in our heart. We're going to bring in our flowers. We want to figure out where we want the flowers on our heart. It's going to be the nicest presentation. Okay, that's to be on the top. Wherever we decide to put it. I think I did it like that. It's lower. and we're going to turn it over. We're going to take a dimensional. We're going to use a dimensional back here on the back of this to help hold this on. And I did put the stems behind it a little bit. I got a tiny one here. Let's put a tiny one there. And I think I can put one there. Okay. Then put dimensionals on the back of this wherever you can. Alright, and then I took the edge and my snips and I cut a really thin strip from this edge. This is the bones of it. If you have the little strips of foam adhesive, I don't have those, but so I took the little strips and I took one side of the backing off and I put some around this little thin edge here so that the bottom had some dimension. Use this one up here. One side off. Here, and it curves because it's cut thin enough. You can curve it around this shape. Right here. Okay, then take all that backing off. It's the hardest part of the whole card, getting all these little backings off. One foam square is showing on the front. I can feel it. Let's see if I can trim it. Yeah, there we go, that's better. Ah, don't stick to me. It's sticking to my fingers. Alright, one more backing. Alright, then we're just going to find a spot on the card where we want it to be and stick it down. There you go. There's our card for today. Well, thank you so much for joining me at my craft table. I hope you have a great rest of your day.